They stuffed him. Formation in the Apple Cup takes a knee. The clock will do the rest.
Welcome back to another edition of the live Couch GM podcast brought to you by QFan.com. We got a special episode today. Texas State is officially going to be joining the Pac-12. Should be official on Monday. We're going to have on guest Keff Ciardello, who is a Texas State alum, reporter, podcast host, to come on and share his thoughts on this move. But first off, as always, this podcast is brought to you by QFan.com. Make sure to check out QFan.com. Subscribe to their premium membership for all things Cougar Athletics. They're our go-to for all things WCU sports. And if you are someone you know, if you're looking to refuel the proper way, check out blacklabelsupplements.com, a third-party tested athlete-approved supplement company here in the Pacific Northwest. Use code CouchGM for 15% off. If you're thinking of buying a home on the West Coast, reach out to myself. If you're thinking of getting solar, reach out to Dylan. And with that, guys, what are your initial thoughts? Breaking news that Texas State has officially been offered.
Well, before we even get to that, I had already set the over-under line for a minute and a half. Who would be the first person to mistake Keff for Jeff? And the under cashes comfortably. Everyone that had the under, go enjoy your money on that one. But no, you're right. Huge show today. We got Texas State. We have CBS media deal. We have Cedric Coward getting drafted, which we'll get to eventually. We have so much. I'm so excited. And I got, we'll save it for the end, but we have to revisit my takes on Cedric Coward because a little bit of egg in the face, considering we had no idea how high he might climb. But let's keep it in the Pac-12 for now.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just no more like waiting. Who's it going to be? They have until July of 2026 to get that 8th full playing football member. And you go out and you get a school in Texas State. And John Canzano's already reported this morning that apparently they might not be receiving a full share right out of the box. And I love that. Gives the conference an opportunity to maybe maneuver a little bit inside the trenches. Who knows? Maybe this opens up something for a football-only Memphis. Obviously, we're expecting maybe one more basketball and non-football sports only. Maybe that's a St. Mary's. I know Jackson,
I was going to say,
really,
Canzano also tweeted.
I do too.
Monitoring.
I do too.
Canzano said Pac-12 monitoring the St. Mary's situation. So I was happy to see that.
Yeah, I think he, reported that maybe a couple days prior to this Texas State news. So, St. Mary's, they've got some good programs. Baseball was in the regionals this year. They're the only team to beat Oregon State until Louisville sent them home in the College World Series. So, it's exciting. I'm really excited to get Keff on here, a Texas State alum, and he's a host and creator for When Now or Get Bent. Print is at Express News San Antonio. His previous bylines, The Statesman, Athletic, Athlon Sports. Let's bring on Keff in here right now. Keff, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Obviously a big day for you as a Texas State alum, as well as the San Marcos community. Tell us what it means for the San Marcos community going forward.
Man, this is massive, and thank you for having me. It's great to join you on a fun day like this, talk about some good stuff for the Bobcats. It's very, very exciting, and this has been a saga going back all the way to last summer, where the rumors started to trickle in, like, hey, the Pac-12, they're looking for some new members, maybe Texas State. It seems so far-fetched in 2024, and it's crazy. Summer 2025, it's a reality. It took a long time, a lot of negotiating, but they're in there. And as far as for the San Marcos community and what it means for Texas State in general, Texas State alums and everybody around, it's elevating a brand that we all knew had so much potential. There's so much potential here. It's forgotten. In the state of Texas, there's 13 FBS programs, but Texas State is 4th, 5th biggest. It's one of the, I know it's top 5. Houston may have the edge on them in that one. But 40,000 students are here. It's nestled right in between San Antonio and Austin. We're 20 minutes away from Austin. We're 30 minutes away from San Antonio. So there is a big market here, and there's a lot of alumni that are consolidated in this area. That area I just told you between San Antonio and Austin is known as the I-35 corridor, and there is I-35 is the highway that is right there. And so many of there's 220,000 living alumni for Texas State. So many of them live in that area, and so I know that it's really going to galvanize this place, because football is king, and football hasn't been Texas State's best sport. They've just started to get it around the last couple years, and just right time, right place, right time, it seems, for this program, as they're bubbling on potential. And now they get a seat at the Pac-12. It's still unbelievable, but there you go.
You know, you mentioned football, 2 straight 8-5 seasons. GJ Kinney, just give us a quick synopsis on what he's done in the last 2 years, just to kind of get them into bowl eligibility the last 2 seasons.
Oh, and it was an uphill battle for sure. I mean, if you don't mind me going back a little bit to around 2012 when Texas State went to FBS, there was a lot of momentum to go from FCS to FBS. They did a whole lot to get them there, but once they got there, really stagnated. Between 2015 and 2022, they didn't win more than 4 games for 8 straight seasons. There was back-to-back 2-10 seasons, cycling through coaches, about 3 different coaches, until finally it was decided, okay, a regime change is needed with the AD, the school president, and everything. They cleared house in 2022. 2021 is when it was going to be announced. 2022 is when they enacted a lot of it. Dr. Kelly Damphus, the new school president here at Texas, I say new, it's been a few years now, but the school president here at Texas State, Don Coryell, the AD, they both understood that sports is what everybody's going to see. It's the front porch of your university, whether you like it or not. It's an educational institution, no doubt, but that's the first thing that everybody's going to see. They're going to see it on TV, and they're going to, if your teams are successful, they're going to mount that success at the university, and it makes it more appealing. But it took them, it took a long time for them to make these regime changes while being in FBS for 10 years. And once they made those changes, they got some new life in here, specifically GJ Kinney, the head coach, a young guy, still only 36 years old, going into his 3rd year at Texas State. It's pretty incredible what they've done. They've just come in and worked the transfer portal. They use hashtag Take Back Texas, because everybody knows people want to recruit the state of Texas. So they'll put out they'll try and go get these players that left this state, and they're trying to get them back into Texas State. So it's been a pretty big push on the recruiting trail, on every single trail, really.
Keff, kind of what you were touching on, I had a quote that I wanted to read to you, and you were sort of touching on it here a little bit, but this was a quote to John Canzano from former Sunbelt and WAC Commissioner Carl Benson. And this is on the potential. This was a couple of weeks ago, the potential of Texas State being added to the Pac-12. And he said, I can tell you exactly what the Pac-12 is going to say if they add them, referring to Texas State. They're going to say that Texas State has the potential to be the next Boise State. I said the same thing when I added them to the WAC, and again when I added them to the Sun Belt. It never happened, but maybe this is the time. Do you think the new AD, the new administration, is this the time? And furthermore, do you actually even agree with that Texas State is somehow the Boise State of Texas, or something to that effect?
I think if you're being overly positive, yeah, you could say that. That's a pretty hard act to follow if you're comparing them to Boise State. I understand why that's the mindset with why Carl Benson would say that. And even going back to when he brought the Bobcats into the WAC for that 1 year and then into the Sun Belt, there was they were pushing the same notions they were today, the same points of how much potential is here, how big the school is, how nice the facilities are, how much has been invested. But the leadership back then with Dr. Larry Tice was the AD back then. The leadership there, that was the issue. I mean, every coach that came in, that was the same report on their way out. Everybody around it, if you talk to the Board of Regents, it was all leadership is the issue. And as soon as they made those changes and somebody came in and was like, hey, you know what? There's a lot of potential here. What happened before is they just moved up and they sat back and waited to win. They didn't bend over backwards promoting the way that this administration does. They don't do all these things. I mean, even going back to last season to build hype around Texas State getting into the Pac-12, they would send a flag, the OMG flag is what they call it, with the Texas State logo, to College game day, and it would actually stand next to the Washington State Cougars flag and the Oregon State flag. They would stand next to them. You could see them in the broadcast. I have pictures. I'll DM them to y'all, where there was a big giant flag standing next to those two, just to build that momentum of like, we want to be in with these guys. We want to be in the Pac-12. That's stuff that the last administration wasn't even thinking about doing, because they weren't just making sure somebody in the area had a flag. They were flying fans out, making sure they woke up early and were waving the flag on College game day. And I know that's a small thing in the scale of realignment, but I feel like that small thing is indicative of the big thing that they've been working on to get them there. And that's why I feel like that assessment by Carl Benson, I think it's fair, where he saw the potential and then it wasn't realized in the Sun Belt. It wasn't. That's the like I said, from 2015 to 2022, they didn't win more than 4 games. And there was only 1 or 2 of those seasons they won 4 games. It was 3-9, 2-10. It was rough. I was covering every second of it. So
yeah,
I remember it vividly. But it's a totally different leadership, and you can see the drastic change in just a couple years. And it was better late than never, I guess. They needed those changes, and it ended up being right here where they could move to the Pac-12.
Well, I totally agree with you. And I think kind of what you allude to, sort of winning within the margins. And that is kind of the MO for, I think, a lot of the new Pac-12 schools, and certainly for Washington. It always has been for Washington State and Oregon State, and for a lot of the schools. And that's why I like Texas State as an ad. You know, admittedly, it was not my first choice, but I like it because all of these universities find themselves in very similar positions, being on the outside looking in of the Power Four, sort of always the bridesmaid, never the bride. But there is sort of a common sense of identity within that. And I feel like it gives this conference something to actually grow on. And I know that everyone still is, let's get to 2030 and see what shakes out, because we're all free agents. But I really like this as a conference that can exist longer than that, as a bunch of schools that have sort of common DNA and can sort of work off of each other. So I think Texas State really fits in nicely with that. Geographically, I'd be curious to know what people in San Marcos think about how this all works out geographically, because I know there is certainly a faction of Pac-12 people that said, let's keep this thing West Coast. There's a faction that says, forget it, regionality's dead in college football. Bring on Texas State, bring on Memphis, hell, bring on USF. You know, how do people in San Marcos feel about being sort of the eastern outpost of the Pac-12 now?
I know most fans, it's kind of that sentiment that you said, where regionality is somewhat dead in college football. And a lot of them are excited about, I get a fly to San Diego, I get a fly to Washington, Oregon, Colorado, Utah, all these states that a lot we don't really visit a whole lot. There's not a ton of reason, and you have an excuse to go check out these new cool places. I know that excites them. I know looking at the opponents, and you see that, no offense to the Sun Belt. Sun Belt is a great conference, but it's just a little spicier when you see Washington State on the schedule. You see Oregon State, you see Boise State, you see some of these heavy hitters in college football. It just gets a little more exciting, even in the basketball sense. I mean, sure, Gonzaga is going to come down here and punch the Bobcats in the mouth, but it's going to be a lot of fun to see it.
It's a pleasure. It's certainly a pleasure. Yeah.
it's an honor. Thank you. May I have another type of deal? But it's exciting. And I know I would say about 75% of the fan base shares what I have. And then there are the traditionalists where they do want that regionality in football. And I respect that. I definitely do. I think if anybody is going to be against it, it might be some of the non-football athletes. Now, this isn't me quoting anybody or anything, but I know that travel is going to be really hard. We're going through 2 time zones. I know us just scheduling this one to come on this radio spot. I was like, hold on, wait, let me do some math, because I'm in Central, y'all are in Pacific. Yeah. So it's going to be, that'll be the adjustment part of it. But I think it's just the way college sports is nowadays, and getting from a financial standpoint for the school, going from just under $2 million a year in the Sun Belt to whatever it ends up being, this Pac-12 media deal, that extra bit of capital is going to go a long way. Even if it ends up being the Bobcats get a reduced share, it's not a full share. We don't know that yet. It's still going to be a significant amount where it'll offset those travel costs. At least it should. But for the most part, everybody's excited. They want to see the Pac-12 banner over UFCU Stadium. They want to see those opponents coming in. It's a lot of excitement because everybody understands this puts Texas State on the national stage somewhat more so than they're used to.
Yeah. And we did get a report on that this morning that it sounds like and it's just a report from Canzano again. It sounds like a bit of a sliding scale that by 2030, it should be a full share, and it's sort of moving its way up year over year. So I don't know. It sounds like there was, certainly respect for the, it'll be at a full share eventually, but, certainly, as you said, an upgrade from the Sun Belt payout.
Yeah, and that went into why it's been such a long process. Is there was a lot of negotiation about how much of a share Texas State is going to get from the Pac-12, because it wasn't the Pac-12's first choice. It's been the favorite for the last few months, but you have to think they were looking UNLV. They were looking at obviously Memphis, Tulane, USF got those offers back during the season. So they were kind of coming back to the Bobcats with their hat in hand, being like, okay, we kind of need y'all, but we still want to go get some of those other guys. So we need extra money for that. Yeah, I could see how the negotiation could go down that way.
And that's been speculation that like maybe this is to try and save something in the coffers to go make another move. That seems far-fetched to me. Like it after the addition of the 5 Mountain West and what that's going to ultimately end up costing, which I think is still up for debate or sort of intermediate. I don't know exactly what that costs, but I don't know how much money is left to just be thrown out for, exit fees. And so it really does, I think while you're right that there were other options ahead, dollars and cents wise, Texas State is number one because financially it made the most sense for both parties. So, whether you look at it as luck or just being, at the right place at the right time, it's great that, we got this addition and now we know before the season and we can start building with our 8 schools.
Yeah, because it will be. It's going to be real interesting to see how the Pac-12 continues to flesh out, because it is all a lot of speculation of, are they going to go get just a football member or what's going to happen going forward. But I think the 8 state schools, I'm pretty sure they're all state schools.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be it's a underrated conference, and as far as some of these other, you see on Twitter and everything, these G5 accounts, how much they're talking about, oh, it's not the same account or it's not the same conference and things like that. But I think once it gets cooking and once the competitiveness starts getting going and seeing some of these teams possibly break into the top 25 and really start to show off the Pac-12, people are going to feel it. It'll take seeing the product on the field, but it's going to be a fun conference.
And I think what you just mentioned on sort of like where does the Pac-12 fall with sort of the AAC and maybe, some of the other or Mountain West still, where do they rank? For me personally, I looked at that the CBS media deal, and the big thing for me was that they are getting 3 guaranteed broadcast network on CBS, big CBS games, regular season, plus the championship game. For reference, AAC, they only got 1 broadcast game. That was their championship game on ABC. And then the Mountain West, they only got 1 as well, and that was on Fox. And those are the big ticket menu items in terms of media rights for sports, because you get this influx of viewership because it's free over the air. And then you get to turn around and you get to, show on your list of, viewership per college, oh, we're ranking higher than these schools. Like, these things sort of in the aggregate matter, and getting those broadcast games is so big. So I think right out of the gate, you can already start to make a case that the Pac-12 is sitting above AAC and the Mountain West. I mean, obviously the Mountain West, we just poached all their schools, but because of this, just the first part of this media rights deal already is giving you hints that we are sitting above some of those conferences, which is great to hear.
Because those TV executives, they're all about the bottom line. They don't have the same biases as a lot of us out here rooting for our universities and everything. They're looking at who's going to make us money, who's the big dog going around, and they're looking at the Pac-12 for that. So You have to. I agree with you 100%. You have to see where they're looking and how they're feeling about the landscape of college football, and money talks, and they're talking.
Yeah. And I think, oh yeah, no, sorry, Connor, continue.
Go for it. I'm going to take it to another topic after this.
Gotcha. Well, I was going to say, I think part of like, sort of the common DNA amongst all these Pac-12 schools and realizing that we're fighting for eyeballs, you see in the Big Ten, at least, when Ohio State gets a primetime noon kickoff on Fox, they're up in arms about this. They're complaining that, oh, we have to wake up early for our kickoff that's airing in a marquee time slot. Meanwhile, over in the Pac-12, we'll wake up at 6 a.m. to get on CBS or, like there is sort of a ragtag sort of rebel alliance mentality where like we're willing to show up whatever to get on the biggest stage. And I love that about this new Pac-12 is that I think everyone is willing to do whatever it takes to get on the highest stage possible. And there's not going to be a whole lot of complaining about, time slots and where people are being played. It means we got to go play on a Wednesday to get on CBS. We'll play on a Wednesday to go play on CBS. Why not?
Hey, Texas State's all about that. I mean, Arizona State on a Thursday last season.
Yeah.
Louisiana Lafayette on a Tuesday. They've been having to do that. So they're used to it. It is a conference of teams that are just trying to prove themselves. Programs that are trying to, you have Washington State and Oregon State. They're trying to reestablish themselves in the powers. You have the other 6 teams that are just trying to prove they belong with those power teams. So it is fascinating. A ragtag group of renegades. I like the way you put that.
Yeah.
And Canzano mentioned that the viewership on CBS is 4 to 5 times the viewership of the now defunct Pac-12 network, which is a failure. So that'll be interesting to see, just if we can get more eyeballs. And you mentioned earlier that Texas State was flying their flag next to Old Crimson during game day. I think that's awesome. And, the CBS deal is now in place. We'll see if there is going to be a potential deal with All-State Insurance, because this is the All-State Conference, right? But I'm curious. I've heard some comparison.
Well played, Connor. Well played.
I've heard some comparisons online of the Texas State environment and game day experience being compared to Washington State. Washington State is a small town. It's a party town. I've heard kind of the same thing of Texas State. Can you just walk us through the overall environment experience of a Texas State game day?
I mean, it's San Marcos is a true college town where it's the college and most of the students take up about 80-90% of the whole area, the whole city. Technically a city, but it's about 60,000-70,000 people. The biggest difference, because I actually was born in Oak Harbor, Washington. My dad was in the Navy.
Oh no!
So I've been up to Washington quite a bit. It's a little warmer here. That's the big difference. Doesn't rain as much. So a little bit more sunshine, but it's been routinely voted the best college town in Texas, even going up against Texas A&M and some of these other Texas schools that are actually college towns. You have like UT there in Austin and stuff like that. So some of them are in cities. It's been voted the best college town in Texas. It's got a river going right through the campus. You can float the river most of the times throughout the year. It's 72 degrees, that river, because it's a natural spring, nice, clear, natural spring. There's a lot of life, a lot of greenery here. I feel like if you're not from Texas and you envision Texas, you think maybe some cactus and desert and dry. This is the hill country. This is Central Texas, where it's real hilly. We've got a lot of green, a lot of life around San Marcos. Definitely worth a visit if you haven't been to Texas or anything. This is a great spot to check out. You fly into Austin, drive 20 minutes, and you're in a little oasis hidden in Texas, a real hidden gem that I think the Pac-12 is going to benefit from.
Okay, Keff. We've got Cougs listening that want to go get drunk out in San Marcos and watch football. Are they flying into Austin or are they flying into San Antonio? What's the better route? I guess
that's a good question.
Good time.
It's funny because I said fly into Austin just because it's a shorter drive, but I actually prefer the San Antonio airport. I feel like it's a lot easier to navigate. You can get out of there quicker. It's a little bit longer of a drive, but you don't deal with the Austin traffic, because that's the big difference between Austin and San Antonio. Is Austin has a terrible highway system that you're going to get traffic in no matter the time, and San Antonio has a really good one. their infrastructures are pretty different. So you can actually get on and going if you fly in through San Antonio. I just know a lot of people like Austin too, so maybe they want to go check it out there. But I'd fly into San Antonio. You could even Uber if you have a spot in San Marcos. You wouldn't worry about renting a car because it wouldn't be too expensive. But yeah, definitely if you can choose, if price isn't the factor, I'd go with the San Antonio airport. That's the way to go in.
Okay. Keff, we also just got a comment. This one, yes. I hope that the Pac-12 picks up 3 other Texas schools. That would be an insane regional conference. That would be insane.
Yes.
However, let's work this out. Let's have a little thought exercise here, Keff. If you are Teresa Gold, Pac-12 commissioner, and you are going to add 3 more Texas schools within reason. We're not adding Texas. We're not adding Texas A&M, those schools.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you going after? Who are the 3 Texas schools that you think are realistic and you could go and grab?
Well, I mean, I actually think 3 is the right number. If you had to if you asked me to pick below 3, I think that would be difficult to parse through it. But I have to say, number 1, UTSA, especially with Texas State going into the Pac-12. There. That's a rivalry. They're right down the street in San Antonio. There's 0 love lost between the fan bases. I think it would be a huge hit if UTSA and Texas State were in the same conference. I would then go up north to just north of Dallas at UNT up there. They're a really good school as well. They've got some good things going. Eric Morris, the coach up there, they've been a growing program as well, and
good
also
basketball program.
Good basketball program. They don't have baseball, but they do well in other sports. I think that would be good for the Pac-12 to kind of get you get South Central Texas with Texas State and UTSA, and then you can get a little bit of North Texas with the Mean Green. Then you go out east to Rice, and they're sitting right there in the Houston mark. I know there's been some stuff said about Sam Houston State. Their facilities leave a lot to be desired. That's the one big thing. I know Rice, they just put out a statement saying that they're going to recommit themselves to pouring more money into athletics. You have to think that maybe they didn't do a well enough job there, and so that's something they're considering. So that would be one to consider for Rice. It's like, well, are they really committed to sports? It's more of an academic institution, which is not a bad thing. Not knocking them at all. It's a great university. But UTSA, UNT, I feel like that's the easy 1 and 2. And then you can pick between Rice and Sam Houston out there. I would lean towards Rice, but Sam Houston, man, the Bearcats, they have a lot of momentum themselves. I mean, they just won FBS. They won FCS national championship in 2020. They did just lose their coach that was there a long time, Casey Keeler. He went to Temple, but the Bearcats, they're still a good candidate if they're really looking to increase that Pac-12 footprint in Texas. So there's a lot of options, that's for sure.
All right, Keff, here's my hypothetical. We've got 8 FBS playing football teams now. If you can get that 9th, it takes a lot less stress off of scheduling, a 4th non-conference game, this and that. Who would be your all sports member if we could only add one more out of everybody that's ripe for the picking?
Question.
Gosh, I think I like the way Memphis, when people have brought that up, that looks good. But I selfishly also really like Tulane just because New Orleans. Wouldn't mind going down there. But I think either of those options. I don't know if South Florida is a little too far away. I know USF has been put in there, but gosh, that travel for them would be incredible. How much they would have to go. But I tend to lean Tulane a little bit right there. But I don't think you could go wrong with either of those 3.
I feel like Tulane is the Texas answer for Texas, or Tulane is to Texas as UNLV is to the West, where everyone's just like, just give me a trip to Vegas, man. Just please get me to Vegas. But hey, New Orleans, I mean, that's not far behind if you ask me. And some would say not even behind at all, depending on what your idea of a good time is.
I go every summer just for Sunbelt Media Day. They do it in New Orleans. It's great. It seems like it's going to be the last one for the Bobcats coming up. But yeah, it's just a 5.5 hour drive for me. You can't beat New Orleans. It's a good time.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump into the basketball side of things with Texas State. Terrence Johnson, the head coach there. And this is a question that I'm probably asking for the Gonzaga and the SDSU fans of the Pac-12. Texas State, if we're looking at their net ranking, they wouldn't be last this year. Fresno State, luckily, was horrible in basketball, but they're around 200 in the net. What kind of momentum does Terrence Johnson have going there? I know he was an interim, got the full-time job, won the Sun Belt. So there's been some momentum with that program. But when you're talking to the Gonzagas and the SDSUs of the world, they want to see a good basketball addition. And I think Jeremiah Dickey and Boise State, and I guess the football rounded, maybe Scott Barnes at Oregon State, they got their wish with Texas State coming in and getting into the footprint of Texas. But what are they going to do in terms of basketball going forward and the momentum there?
I'm glad you brought up basketball. It is very much a make or break year for Texas State basketball. Because you mentioned Terrence Johnson. Everybody calls him TJ around here. When he took over after it was the last coach, Danny Casper, some stuff came out about racial insensitivity at practice. It got real messy. So they, despite having success, they built a pretty good program when he was here. They moved TJ up into that role, and immediately he won 2 Sun Belt regular season titles back to back. And it seemed like, okay, it seemed like they next man up. They plugged in their guy, and here we go. But the last 3 years have been very disappointing. Each at the end of every season, the whole team basically leaves. I mean, even they just announced 9 new signees. 8 of them are transfers, 1 high school. Basically, a whole new team for basketball, which has been the situation each of the last 3 years. I think after 3 years of that, even though he did get those conference championships, it's been 3 years of it. I think this is now a very much a make or break year. They have to make something happen. They got to do some real stuff in the Sun Belt tournament, because that's been, even when they won those regular season championships in the Sun Belt, they went into the Sun Belt tournament both times and lost their first game and were out. So it's been even the good times when there was momentum, it ended real flat and left everybody with a bitter taste in their mouth. So they have a lot to prove. And I feel like before going into the Pac-12, before the Bobcats are going to be facing opponents like Gonzaga, like San Diego State, they may need to make some changes if they don't see that it's going in the right direction. And they're about to enter a real tough conference as far as basketball is concerned. So, yeah, very much. If there is one coach on the hot seat to watch in a sport at Texas State, it's basketball.
That's an interesting point, and something that resonates with me, that kind of similar to maybe WSU, and obviously an outsider looking in, I don't know the full specifics, but when WSU had an administration, an AD change back, I think it was 2011 when Moose came in, there was a huge emphasis to push on the football investment. You see hiring of Mike Leach. I think it was $60 some odd million invested into infrastructure of the football stadium. And basically so much attention was pushed towards the football team that the basketball program was heavily neglected. And this is coming off the Tony Bennett years of Klay Thompson and tons of basketball success. And it fell off of a cliff at the expense of football succeeding. Do you feel like something similar has happened at Texas State with this new administration change, where it was like, we got to get our priorities straight and football needs to be addressed first? And maybe there has been some neglect on the basketball end?
That is honestly a great question. It's a point I hadn't considered, but as you're laying it out, I'm like, yeah, that's probably exactly what's been happening. There has been a ton of focus on football, a ton of push from resources to promotion to everything towards football, and rightfully so. It's the big bad daddy, as we all know, especially in Texas, but I feel like it's anywhere in America it is. And so I feel like maybe basketball was pushed a little bit to the wayside as far as expectations, as far as resources for recruiting, NIL to retain guys, not just recruiting and going out and getting more guys, but making sure you re-recruit them and they don't leave and enter the portal, because that keeps happening. It seems like they'll get a player. It's like, oh, that's a really good looking player, and they'll leave. And it's not like some of them, they elevate and they go to a P4 or something like that. There's a lot of them are going lateral or going down, taking a step down, which is very telling of the culture that's going on. So I feel like that's a really good point you brought up, where there's been a lot of focus on football, and maybe it needs to shift a little bit towards basketball, especially with what's on the horizon for the Bobcats.
And Michael, yes, they are going to be an all sport member. Matt over here as well comments, hey, Freddie Jimenez here. Football and baseball are Texas State's main sports, and that's a segue into my next question for our Oregon State fans, who are the flag bearer of baseball, really on the entire West Coast. They make the College World Series this year with an independent schedule. So what's Texas State going to bring in terms of baseball? And then my second part to this is, what women's programs are upper echelon for Texas State?
Yeah, for baseball, last season was a bit of a disappointment. Same with the year before, a little disappointing, but they were just they made it all the way to the Stanford Regional. They got a win over Stanford. This respectable baseball program has been the calling card of Texas State since they've been FBS Division I. I know baseball's not FBS, but since they've been since they've moved to the WAC and Sun Belt from the Southland Conference, it's been even going back to the Southland Conference. I mean, if you're an MLB fan, you know the name Paul Goldschmidt. He's a Texas State grad. He was playing in the Southland days, hitting a lot of home runs and breaking some windshields in the parking lot. But a very respectable baseball program. And they totally, all the way going back to 2010, they totally revamped their baseball complex, even before the big FBS jump, where it's a nice enough complex where they're able to schedule P4s to actually come to town and play here, because there'll be enough stands for the fans to sit there and everything. So baseball has been taken very seriously. And as much as we've said, the focus fell off of basketball because of football, the focus never fell off baseball. There are passionate baseball fans here. There are some fans who will tell you it's more of a baseball school than a football school, but that's just because how the program's success had been. We'll see how it goes if they can turn that around. But there's I wouldn't necessarily say the coach Trout is on the hot seat like I would say TJ, but it's getting warm at least. He's got to do something. They can't be stagnant where they have really high highs where they'll beat Texas or Texas A&M on a Tuesday game, but then they go into the weekend and they'll drop a series in the conference against a conference opponent. Just that up and down nature of how they've been has really been the issue the last couple seasons. But they've gone out. I'm forgetting his name right now. They just got a Texas transfer, a really good player to transfer in, coming right down the road from Texas. I know Coach Trout has been hitting that recruiting trail real hard, that transfer portal specifically to go get guys. But a lot of focus on baseball here. So that is one program that I'm not worried about competing in the Pac-12. I will say, I'm not saying they're going to come in and be the best, but I'm saying I'm not worried about them going in and facing these teams and not being too small for the moment.
We're just going to hope that Washington State baseball isn't the worst in the Pac-12. They were the worst in the Mountain West this past year, and actually humbled. They had to spend an extra week or so in Texas because there were snow flurries in Pullman. So it makes sense that a Texas school that is always sunny, always warm, might have a better baseball program.
Yeah, especially with college baseball where it starts a little sooner. Those cold. The cold really can take over. I kind of forgot the second part of that was women's sports as well. Yes. For Texas State. Volleyball is their strongest women's sport. They have won so many conference championships in volleyball, a dominant program. I mean, for 40 years, there was one coach named Karen Chisholm, and she retired, handed the reins off to Sean Hewitt, and he picked up right where she left off. They are still humming, even when he has players that are no longer from the Karen Chisholm regime anymore. He's been there long enough, and they're still able to do it. So volleyball definitely has the most pride, but right below them, softball. Softball is right there as well. Just won Sun Belt regular season this year. So they do some terrific things in softball. And at third place, track and field for sure. They just won Sun Belt in indoor and outdoor this past spring. So track and field they have a great track and field facility here at Texas State. They poured a lot of money into that not too long ago. So that's why there's a thing called the Vic Bubas Cup, where it's a cup it's a trophy awarded to the best sports athletic department in the Sun Belt Conference. Whichever team did the best for that year, it's based on a point system upon how you win across all the sports. And Texas State has won that 3 of the last 4 years, just because football is definitely the one that has lacked, not the last couple years, but in years past. that has somewhat held them back. But the other sports around Texas State have been taken very seriously. Football is the one everybody sees, so a lot of people don't realize that for the Bobcats, but they've won a lot of conference championships in other sports.
Keff, I have one more question, and we're really appreciative of the time.
Yeah. Absolutely.
What is Texas State looking like in the NIL space? And I know like exact numbers can be sort of elusive at times, but with the House settlement, and I know WSU has sort of allocated, I believe it's like $4 million somewhere around there in the revenue sharing. Do you know what kind of resources that Texas State is working with in the NIL space?
Yeah, that's interesting. You brought up the $4 million for Washington State, because that's something I've wondered as well. I know Texas State, they've put out 2 different statements over since the new year hit, where it's from the AD Don Coryell saying they're committed to revenue sharing, whatever they can, however they can do it. Probably not the whole $20.5 million or whatever the cap is going to be and how it goes up. But in my head, I was wondering if they have like a set number, like a $4 million. We haven't heard that yet. Obviously, switching conferences changes that. Whatever your budget is, it seems like the budget will go up once they go to the Pac-12. I know they are committed to revenue sharing in some capacity. What that looks like, how much, I'm not exactly sure. It's nice to hear some, like, watch that $4 million for Washington State. It's kind of good. I hope more teams will be a little more transparent about, like, hey, this is what we have in the coffers to share with these players. As far as NIL, sorry if I'm cutting you off, but
no, continue. Sorry.
As far as NIL, I was surprised when NIL was going in. I was like, okay, I'm sure there'll be a little bit of money of fans coming up and wanting to spend. I was surprised that how, especially once GJ Kinney got here, how motivated a lot of fans were to donate to these collectives. There's one specific called the Maroon and Golden Collective. They've done some real terrific things. They don't take a profit either. They just make sure money gets facilitated to the athletes. And I was like, even getting last year's quarterback, he was a senior named Jordan McLeod. He, in 2023, the year before he got Texas State, Sun Belt Offensive Player of the Year. He enters the transfer portal. You think, okay, a player like that, he's going to go to a P4 or something somewhere. Texas State was able to give him a competitive offer, specifically on the back of NIL, that they got him to come here to Texas State, that didn't seem like something that was possible before. So I was surprised at how motivated they were. It's not like there's a billionaire like Texas Tech walking around with the deepest pockets ever, but they have enough, like we were talking about, 220,000 living alumni, 40,000 current students. There's enough people that are passionate enough that they're willing to put a little bit in the middle to help out.
Yeah, Jordan McLeod, one of my favorite quarterbacks last year to use in college football 25. Nice. Yeah, great on the run, speed, was a fun one. One question I did have for you as well is does Texas State have any big non-conference football games, whether it's on the road or getting a P4 school to come to Texas State over the next 3 to 5 years? We understand how these schedules are, built 5-6 years ahead of time.
Yeah, I know last season it was pretty great to see Arizona State in San Marcos for that Thursday night game, 3-point game, going up against Camp Scatterbo and leave it at quarterback. That was a fun game. We've seen Baylor come in years past. I know on the schedule 2026 they have Texas, but that's in Austin. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that they actually have coming to San Marcos. I know they are there, where they'll schedule a home and home, or usually if it's a big team like Baylor, what they did is they gave Baylor 2 home games and then Texas State gets one. It's like a home and a home. Sure. That was confusing laying it out that way. But I know that Eastern Michigan's coming up this season as well. That's not the biggest school, but getting some of these teams in there. They have been able to, as they've renovated the stadium more, UFCU Stadium, they've been able to be more appealing to get teams to actually come visit them.
Who is Texas State's biggest rival?
Oh, UTSA. No doubt. Not even in conference. It's just right down the street. It's why they routinely schedule a non-conference. It's a non-conference schedule coming up again this year. It'll be in San Antonio. Texas State finally won one last year. That was the first time in 6 tries, because UTSA has only had a football team since 2012. So UTSA took a 5-0 lead on the Bobcats, but they will play until 2031 in non-conference each year, going back and forth. San Marcos, San Antonio, San Marcos. And whenever last year it was a sellout in San Marcos, the year before at the Alamo Dome, it was the second largest game UTSA has ever had. It was, I think, 49,000 showed up to the game at the Alamo Dome. The most they ever had was 56,000. That was their very, very first game in 2012. Just to tell you how, and it was split. You look there, it was maroon and gold over here, it was orange and blue over there. And so, yeah, UTSA. That's why I think when you asked if there's a Texas team they go get, I want UTSA. There's a lot of other Texas State people that are like, no, don't want anything to do with them. Let them fester in the AAC. But I would love for it if the Bobcats and Roadrunners went hand in hand into the Sun Belt or into the Pac-12.
That was definitely the other one on our radar as well. And it looks like you guys are at UTSA this year, and then you're also at Arizona State. So both of those games will be fun to see.
Yeah. Those are two games that are on the road this year that were at home last year for the Bobcats.
Awesome. Well, Keff, thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking the time. Where can people find your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Twitter at Keff_C. Also on YouTube. Win Now or Get Bent is our channel. We're also on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're there. And you can check out some articles from time to time in the San Antonio Express News writing about these Bobcats.
And then, Kev, how do we enunciate your last name? Sorry, that was a question for the three of us.
Ciardello.
Ciardello.
Ciardello. Yeah, that's CI.
I
appreciate you asking. Yeah, I just did a radio spot in Austin this morning. They said Cardello. I didn't correct them. I'm like, it's fine, no problem. They got the name of the podcast right. That's all you need.
That's right.
We'll love it. Kev, thank you so much for taking 45 minutes of your morning. We're excited. I would say for the most part, I'd say generally everybody else in the Pac-12 is pretty excited about this. So thank you so much for the time, Kev.
Hey, thanks for thinking of me for this. I'm excited. I can't wait to get some more synergy with you guys. I'll get you on Win Now or Get Bent sometime. We'll get it cooking. I'm fired up, boys.
Awesome. Bobcats and Cougs.
Yes, sir. Cat.
All right. There we have it. Initial reactions. First off, for me, it's just like Texas State is an underrated school. They're just one of the universities that you just haven't heard of because of the other universities throughout Texas. But everything that we've been starting to hear about Texas State is very promising. What are your guys' takeaways?
Yeah, you just keep warming up to it the more you hear about it. You feel like they have an administration that cares about athletics. It's in Texas, so you already have an inclination that they care about athletics. And as you said, right there, right in between San Antonio and Austin, like not too hard to get to. You keep warming up to the idea of it. That's for sure.
Dylan, any initial thoughts?
I'm excited. I think what they're going to bring in terms of the entirety of their sports programs, it's good to hear that the baseball programs on top gives, maybe the Oregon States of the world, some better feeling about baseball going forward. But one thing I took from the interview, it sounds like this entire athletic department, if you're a head coach, like this is that year, like WSU is working with one more year until they get into the Pac-12, where I think administration, leadership, the athletic department's going to be really looking, sorry, I'm making a Michael Scott reference here, long and hard about what the programs are doing going forward.
And just for clarity, this is going to be an all sport edition, as mentioned before. And this move is expected to be official on Monday when the Board of Regents for Texas State is set to meet and decide on this. But aside from that, let's kind of pivot into the CBS media deal news. Any additional information that you guys want to get out there? As we know, CBS has agreed to be a partner with the Pac-12 moving through the 2031 season. And so they are guaranteed 3 football games and 3 basketball games per year per university. Is that correct?
So that is 3 broadcast games. And actually I wanted to explain this on the pod because I think there's a younger side of the audience that really does not understand how the levels, the tiers work of television now because it's so convoluted with streaming. Broadcast sits on the top. That's your CBS, NBC, Fox, ABC. Free, over the air. Your grandparents, when they had 3 channels on the TV, that's what they watched. That gets the biggest audiences. Next, you got your cable. Sitting high above that is ESPN. sort of the leader of cable. And then you get your FS1, CBS Sports, some of you, I'm trying to think about the other cable guys that are in there, but those are who are in the cable. And then your streamers, Peacock, ESPN Plus. So that's kind of the tier of it. But we actually just got a Nielsen rating for the first time that streaming was viewed more than linear television. So for all the people that are complaining about games that might be aired on streamers or stuff like that, now I understand if you're frustrated, if you're Jim Moore and you just can't get your TV to work and you're struggling with a streaming service, that I understand. I sympathize with you. However, if you're looking at it from a pure ratings perspective, I don't know if being on a streamer is that much worse than being on a cable sans ESPN. Obviously, you want to be on ESPN because that's the biggest of the cable networks. But the 3 games that they are referencing, the 3 football and basketball, are games that will air on CBS. And that's where you think, like, man, they might be trying to do something like Fox has done, where you're airing games on Fridays where there's less, it's less messy. There's more opportunity for eyeballs to get on the game as opposed to a Saturday. So though that's what those 3 football and basketball games, including the championship. So those will be on big CBS, which is a huge win for the conference. As I was mentioning earlier, that the AAC only had 1. That was on ABC, and that was their championship game. And the Mountain West only had 1, which was their championship game on Fox. So the fact that we're starting out of the gate with a media deal that puts us comfortably in between sort of the Big 12, ACC, and then below them, and then above the AAC and Mountain West, I think that's a huge win for the Pac-12 in its first media deal.
And as Canzano reported, CBS, as I mentioned earlier, 4 to 5 times the viewership of the Pac-12 network, instead of having to have an additional subscription just to watch the games, which only Pac-12 fans and viewers would be watching. That doesn't give you any national exposure, essentially, unless someone was subscribing to the top. So he noted that this is more of an exposure over revenue type deal. So even if it doesn't bring in a ton of revenue, it's getting more eyeballs on the product. And that's the end goal, is to increase the brand exposure and the image any way that you can.
Totally. And I have no inside information on this, but my speculation would be that they perhaps gave a bit of a discount to get those broadcast time slots or those guaranteed games. However, you might have an opportunity to charge a premium for more streaming related games, because we have to remember we are currently still, while the streaming wars could be largely thought of sort of like 2019 through sort of like 2023, like the streaming wars have slowed down. There are still, ESPN is launching, or they're just calling it ESPN, but they're ESPN direct to consumer, and people are following suit. So people are trying to get more content to put on their streamers, which potentially means you could try and maybe charge a premium to get some better games on streaming. And if it means that you're getting more money to be on a streamer rather than, cable, then that might make sense for the conference. And personally, I do not struggle with getting on ESPN Plus or Paramount Plus or Peacock or whatever
Apple
it may
TV
be.
or Netflix game.
Apple TV. Yeah, certainly stuff like that. Hey, we've been told that the conference is going to be innovative. So, like why not go on Netflix or something like that if it's available?
One thing for basketball too that Canzano's brought up a couple times, I even think about it, is the HBO Max side of things. They've got a partnership with the Big East, and what is better than having your broadcast start with a UConn Big East game, and then you move to the nightcap and it's San Diego State Gonzaga or San Diego State Colorado State. Even Utah State can get their own marquee game with how well their program's been over the last 5 to 10 years. I mean, you look at it, 4 different head coaches, they all make the NCAA tournament. It's exciting. And, I personally, like I said earlier, when we jumped on the show, it's just nice to not have to, be thinking, okay, who is this 8th member? Deep down, we all knew, hey, like Texas State was going to be ripe for the pick if Memphis or Tulane or some of these UNLV didn't work. So now the Pac-12 has time to figure out, hey, what are they going to make? Is it going to, like you said earlier, Jackson, is it just going to increase similar to what Calford has in the ACC by 2030? You know, they're making a full share in the Pac-12. And you hope that maybe that opens up some money for another big time school to come in. But I think we're probably looking at St. Mary's as getting that next ad publicly.
For sure. One more point I'd like to make on the CBS media deal. We just got a comment suggesting that believing that the big CBS games would be the Apple Cup, Civil War, and then some feature of Boise. I 100% agree with you. And earlier this week, I had tweeted out, trying to play program and trying to predict those games. And I was not thinking about our non-conference games. And that was something that I wanted a little bit of clarification on. And I'm assuming that this comment is right, that those non-conference games, Oregon State versus Oregon, Washington State versus University of Washington, will be options for CBS to air those games. However, I find that very disappointing because I would love for those to be conference matchups. But obviously we are paying them, or they are paying us for the rights. We do not get to decide what those games that they will be airing. That's kind of the terms of the deal.
Also, isn't typically the home team, so let's say if UW's the home team in the Apple Cup, aren't they in the Big Ten going to control those broadcast rights? Is it home? Yeah. Is it the home team controlling? I'm not too sure.
I wish I knew. Yeah, I was going to say, I wish I knew. I don't know, but doesn't CBS, does CBS have a deal? Because they do Big Ten games as well. They do SEC and Big Ten. That's one don't have my facts straight on, so won't be able to say. But that was something that I am still trying to figure out, whether those games will be eligible, or because if they are eligible, it seems like a no-brainer. So he's saying home team is responsible for production. I would believe that. So yeah, I don't know if those are those games, because at least WSU is home this year. So that's this year. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a wait and see, or at least until we hear more. Maybe someone will provide further clarification. But if it is starting in 2026, WSU will be on the road in Washington, so we wouldn't be on the hook for that one. As being one of the
I'm
marquee
seeing
games.
A couple comments on baseball. You mentioned Rice. I'm seeing they can play baseball, so maybe that'd be cool. Anders, thoughts on Dallas Baptist as a Pac baseball affiliate? Maybe baseball only, but Anders, my man, baseball ain't controlling this. It's football that's driving the train.
Revenue sports.
Exactly.
Wish it were different, but that's the world we live in.
And do you think St. Mary's has a chance to join as a non-football school? They have good baseball and basketball programs. Yes, Mitchell, and Canzano said this a couple days ago. Keep on the lookout, especially with this deal only going till 2031. I'm a big fan of adding St. Mary's to the pot. And, we still don't know what Gonzaga's share is. There's still not full clarity if they're a full share as a basketball only school. Are they 75% and get up to a full share by year's end? But I think if you're taking a look at St. Mary's, they're definitely going to come in at a reduced share as just being, everything besides football. So,
but I think what makes it to add on to your point, what makes it worth it for those, for those schools is the structure of the unit payment for basketball. Is you're retaining 50% of your unit, which is complete. Back in the old Pac-12, that was split up 11 or 12 separate ways. Your unit. So retaining 50% of that, even if you're coming in at a reduced share, I think it makes a lot of sense for a program like St. Mary's, who's going to back themselves to make the tournament more often than not. And so financially, I think it probably makes a lot of sense for those basketball schools with the structure of the new Pac-12.
I did have one comment I wanted to share earlier. We weren't gonna throw that up while Keff was on, but Anders said this ad is the realignment equivalent of a sad field goal to make the game 35-33, and we've got a live shot of Anders typing that into our comment section right here. Here he is. We appreciate the love, Anders. But
Ashton, I would love you to articulate why you feel that way, because I'm on the exact opposite spectrum of that, where I feel like this is, dollars and cents wise, it makes perfect sense. From an athletic competitiveness perspective, it feels to make sense. The only reason that I am somewhat skeptical is the distance. So, Honors, Ashton, if you're still with us, please elaborate on why you feel that way, because everything that we're seeing right now, I feel like it feels like a great ad. Sad field goal leaves. Should have gotten more, but we need to get something, and scoring more isn't likely based on how the game is. So is what we got.
My only potential negative opinion on Texas State was just not knowing much about Texas State. So that's the only potential negative perception that I had moving into it. And the more that I learn about Texas State, the size of their school and the potential, it's more and more promising.
Yeah. And I think too, fundamentally, you're right. It was not the Pac-12's first choice. But when you consider the expenses of the other choices, then the Texas State becomes a lot more appealing. Do you really want to be going in the red just so you can get Memphis, so you can watch Memphis play your school once a season? Come on. That doesn't make sense.
Well, and I also think, just by adding Texas State right now, I mean, it doesn't mean that the Pac-12 is done by any means of expansion a couple years down the line. And even Canzano said this, maybe this is positioning as Memphis to come in as a football only ad, and maybe the Big East is able to implement them into their basketball conference going forward. And then all of a sudden, Ed Scott's like, I'm getting $6.5 million in basketball revenue from the Big East, and 7 to 10 million revenue in football with the Pac-12. You never know. He's continued to keep his stance of, I'm looking to do what is best for the university going forward. And obviously a little bit of that stance goes into ACC, Big 12 type things. But when you take a look at the Memphis fan base regarding Pac-12 on the Twitter sphere, they want nothing to do with the AAC anymore. They're over it. They're tired of watching football and basketball in that conference. You're tired of North Texas being the belle of the ball in terms of your best conference opponent for a quad 1, quad 2 opportunity in basketball. So I think there could still be some plays in 2027, 2028. Who knows what happens with mediation and the poaching fees that a lot of folks don't think are going to be truly applied in this mediation and in this lawsuit that's going on. The exit fees, hey, that's one thing, but poaching, that's where kind of the clarity needs to come in terms of what the Pac-12 and the Mountain West Conference are doing in mediation.
And if you're watching the stream, make sure to hit that like button. Share this with a Texas State, Washington State, Pac-12 fan. We'll be covering a lot more on the Pac-12 moving forward. And if you guys are ready, we're going to kind of pivot to Cedric Coward.
Yes, we have to. We have to get to Cedric Coward. Back to our roots, our humble WSU roots right here.
Not Colin Coward, I must add.
Not, yes, as Malika Andrews said on the ESPN broadcast, going 11th overall to Portland and then being traded over to Memphis for, there's the haul right there.
So Grizzlies value Cedric quite a bit, right? I mean, from what I'm seeing here,
got to.
They move back 5 picks. Basically, they get 2028 first rounder, 27 second, and a 28 second rounder.
Yeah.
And in the end, Connor, a lot of these second round draft picks, they truly sometimes don't muster into anything, in terms of the NBA.
Oh, that's a Jalen Wells.
Yeah, but I will say this. It was quite interesting when Jalen Wells posted a photo with Cedric Coward about an hour before the draft started. It seemed to me like Cedric already knew where he was going. Obviously, the green room invite plays a big deal into, hey, I've been told I'm going to get lottery money and not Duke money.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue to address what perhaps if you are a longtime listener, maybe the elephant in the room. I believe we were having a discussion about Cedric Coward about a month-ish ago, maybe 6 weeks to a month, give or take. And on that episode, I said that I don't care whether Cedric Coward gets drafted or he goes to Duke because he only played 6 games for WSU. And I have no meaningful memories of Cedric Coward. And now I have one. I have my meaningful memory, him getting drafted as a lottery pick. And I would like to say that despite the fact that I am wrong or was wrong, I think my initial point that I actually made was the argument is not as the recruiting pitch to WSU, how we use this as a recruiting pitch is how much money did this guy get as a product of coming to WSU? At the time we were having the conversation, we were talking about a possible late first round to a second round pick, which would have put him probably about like $2 million annually. The reports we were hearing was he had probably about a $2 million offer on the table from Duke. Then the equation to me didn't matter if he stayed or go. But a month of time of sort of draft workouts and stuff like that, and Cedric Coward is shooting up the boards and then was talking at one point in time potentially being a top 10 pick. And he ends up being a lottery pick. And now it's like a look what I found win for WSU. You have, Chris Vernon, very popular radio guy in Memphis, who's also on the Ringer, wearing a WSU football jersey literally the day of. Chris Vernon, if you ever hear this, I would love to know exactly how much you spent to get a WSU jersey the day after the draft. That was pretty ridiculous. And even if it was just all the verifiable proof we have is one jersey sale, you can already sort of feel the promotion of WSU and using this as a marketing tool, particularly with the last few years of having, I think was it 3 of the last 4 years we've had a Coug drafted, or is it? Trying to remember what the exact one. It's FA
2020,
Jalen,
2023, 2024, and 2025. So 4 Cougs technically
4 in the
last
5
years,
yeah.
even though it's 6 seasons.
Yeah. I mean, that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. Even if it's across multiple coaches, you got to respect that for the basketball program. And certainly we've seen the basketball program getting better. So Cedric, I was wrong. I'm so happy that you got drafted in the lottery because it's been such a win for WSU. And yeah, I was wrong.
And just to note, he is the 3rd WSU basketball player drafted in the first round, and he ties Klay Thompson for the highest overall draft pick by a Coug. So just to see that it's Coug jersey anywhere, like that's extreme value.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, yeah, it would have been a lot different if he went in the late first or the early second. But guess what? He didn't. He was a lottery pick. So go Cougs.
Go Cougs. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Make sure to like and subscribe again. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below on this edition of Texas State of the CBS media deal. We're going to have a lot more information coming in the next few weeks as we get more information on the media deal, maybe any additional, additions as well over the coming months. So again, make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Anders. Go Cougs.